Welcome to Above the Gallery, a podcast focused on conversations with professional creatives. Join us as we casually explore the intersections of wisdom, creativity, and innovation. On this episode of ATG, we welcome the renowned artist and founder of the Florence Academy of Art in Florence, Italy, Daniel Graves. So for those that don't know you, Daniel Graves, founder of the Florence Academy, 1991. What an institution. Where is it today? What are you guys doing today as far as the institution or just yourself as a painter? I know that's a broad question, but for those that are not familiar with the Florence Academy, touch a little bit about it, and just give us some color.
Wow. It's a long story,
I know,
for sure. But I'll try and, pack it in so that we can get an idea for those people that haven't heard of the Florence Academy, and hopefully spark enough curiosity to look us up on the web and take a look at the school, the campus, and the program. Started in 1991 in the gardens of the Corsini Palace, and it was a handful of students, myself, that was it. And through the years, it's just grown and grown. We had 7 locations around Florence at one point. Was constantly trying to find a place that would accommodate the student body and give us North Light. So we looked for about 12 years and just happened to stumble across a place that would really suit our needs. And it was for sale. Fortunately, we had a board in place that was incredibly supportive. And we were able to purchase the building and renovate it. And it was a tough year of renovation because we had to keep the programming going and at the same time be on site virtually every day. So
this is renovation in Florence, Italy, which is a completely different animal from what at least I'm familiar with.
Since you've had some experience renovating here and know that there are challenges no matter where you are in the world, Florence was more than a challenge because the idea of planning ahead is not something that actually exists. So fortunately, Susan Tintori, who was a colleague at the time, and we were really focused on getting this done in the shortest possible time. So we became site managers and showed up every day and got it done in miraculous time. I mean, most people just can't believe we were literally the day before classes, we were still laying stone in the entranceway. Sure.
And what year was that compared to 1991 when you founded the institution?
We, I think, have been in the building now 8 years. Yeah. Now the corners are a little bit rounded. We've been there just long enough to really, but we've already run out of room and we're looking for other space. So
are you?
Programming is constantly being developed. We're going to start an etching program this year. Real excited by that because it's something I've wanted to do for probably 40 years. But you need a facility, you need all the right equipment and so forth. And finally, through some generous grants, gifts, we've been able to put together a studio. So in May, we do a pilot course in the school for just our students. And then in September, we're opening it up for people from the outside.
Wow.
So really excited.
Sounds exciting. On your website, you have a video of the transformation of the property, of the school. That's fascinating too. And it's right on is it right on the homepage? Or is it on About Us?
No, it's. I think it's a link to see that. Every once in a while, I look back and, take a look at the condition of the building when we first took over, and it was
puts things in perspective.
Wow. Yeah. But really, now it's a beautiful campus, and I think it's almost a perfect environment for the activity that we have. We have 330 square meters of skylight. So we work virtually the whole school under natural light, which was one of my requirements. I think that was incredibly important in looking for a building that would house a school of this type. So even the sculpture studios are all under natural light. And
obviously you're a painter, you're an educator. Are you more of an educator today or are you more of a painter today? Or is that fair?
It's always been a balance in my life. My days divided into 3 areas. Family always first, then painting, and then teaching. And so when the last 2 get confused, usually when I'm least happy. I want to keep the balance always. I don't usually confuse family with the other two activities. If you know your priorities and you are happy with the way that you perceive your life and the balance that you need to stay in equilibrium with everything that you're trying to accomplish, I think everything goes smoothly. It's just when they get out of sync.
Yeah. With young artists that are coming to Florence Academy, do you see a lot? I mean, in my opinion, from my perspective, which I'm not an artist, first and foremost, I will own that all day long. So I approach things completely different. But an artist that wants to enroll into Florence Academy, they have a great idea of what they'd like to at least shoot for or attempt by attending the curriculum. Do you find artists that come and find that this was either a more challenging exercise than they anticipated, or are they just above that and they're intellectual and they approach it just a different way than I would?
Trey, that's a great question because it touches on so many things that are at the core of learning any art. And so whether you're a dancer or whether you're a musician, and often I use music to explain the process of learning to draw or paint or sculpt realistically. And that is that you have to go through the scales. There's no shortcut. There's no way to pick up this information. It's really a great deal of it is just almost muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so the other aspect of this that you touched on, I think, was really important to delve into a bit, and that is what programming will set the artist free. So what can you teach somebody to allow them to express the ideas that they have? So you need a kind of universal, principled education. And that's why I think the Florence Academy's curriculum has been really founded on the idea of the École des Beaux-Arts, which for all of its shortcomings and whatever you think about the École des Beaux-Arts, it produced painters as varied from Picasso to Bouguereau. So you get the extreme academic and you get people that used the training as a springboard for something else. And so desire, nor have I ever had a desire in any way control what an artist wants to say or how they want to say it. Entering into a kind of academic program is like learning grammar or learning the scales. It's just fundamental to the process of becoming an artist. And if at some point the student no longer feels that they're gaining anything from the kind of curriculum we have, they're always free to go. I think that's, the door's always open. I don't want anybody to come to the school that doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, sure.
And so we don't really take attendance. We ask them how their attendance is as part of their assessment. And I think one of the most instrumentally important things that we've done at the school is to develop a critique at the end of every trimester that allows the student to have all of their professors in front of them at one time and talk about their work. So they see their weaknesses, their strengths, and they're all on the same page. And we record everything. We keep track of it so that we can then literally hand the student, okay, this is what you need to work on. These are some of the projects you should work on. Here's where you're doing really well. And that, I think, is an invaluable aspect to the curriculum that we've developed over the years. And so I now have teachers that have been in the system, in our working with me for 20 years, and the combined knowledge of what they're able to do. And, I don't control any of them. I really set them free. They went through the program. Almost everybody at the school, all the teachers have gone through their curriculum themselves, but they take with that their own version of that. And I don't ever want them to, I don't want to say to them, you have to do it this way, or this is the, we work together to form the curriculum that we all agree upon. But at the end, it's really up to them. They have a great deal of freedom within that structure to be able to pass on that information the way they feel it should be passed on. And so I think it's not good for anybody. And if we work together, everything's going to get better and improve. Which leads me to another point, which is education of patrons, which I think is something you're quite interested in. And I find the biggest challenge on so many levels is a really good grasp of what art can do for you on a personal level. And so why do you buy art? Why is it important in your life? And once you open a dialogue, once you have a conversation with a painting or sculpture, whatever it is, and you begin by asking that first question, why did the artist make this work? And what is it about it that I'm captivated by? And then you slowly peel back the onion skin and you start to realize that there's something at play that can be really meaningful, and it unfolds differently every time you look at a painting. And I think joy and the appreciation for somebody's talent, vision, and all the hard work it took them to get to be able to produce something that of significance, it enriches one's life. And so you surround yourself with beautiful automobiles, which I like too, and beautiful home, beautiful artifacts, and so forth. But a big part of that, and I think when you look back to the 19th century, people collected art, they talked about art, they were really engaged in and I think it's so enriching. And I've been listening to podcasts and so forth that other people starting to touch on this. And I just think if it was, people became more aware of how incredibly important it is to the kind of quality of life that we can create around us, I think it's just amazing.
What else is on your agenda for the year for the school, or are you pulling back from the school? I know we've talked a little bit about that. Yeah. I know are you heading up the etching program?
Yes.
And so I think, and we don't have to.
But I've stepped down as director.
So you're no longer the director?
I'm no longer the director.
Okay. Yeah.
And Tom Richards has taken my place and doing an amazing job. He's super qualified, young, enthusiastic. Everything I could have dreamt for. And so super happy.
And so how many locations does the school have?
We have the main campus,
in Florence,
3,500 square meters. And we have the workshop campus, which is very close, which is about 400 square meters. And we've recently taken over a co-op, old grocery store that went out of business. We took over that. So it's another 400 square meters there. Wow. So, yeah.
That's a lot of space. But all of that is in Florence.
All of it is Florence. Yeah, we're just east of the city. Okay. So if you go upstream from the Arno, along the Arno, you'll come to the school.
So did you have satellite campuses in Sweden and New Jersey at some point?
Yep. We had in Jersey, which we had to close down. And the campus in Mölndal, Sweden, just outside of Gothenburg, is going strong. We're doing really well. Yeah.
Very good. And any future plans of expansion other than in Florence?
I'm no longer holding the reins, so I don't know.
How does that feel? Is it difficult, or kind of watching your oldest walk away or flying away? I
think in the beginning, I was worried that I could find the right person. And when that person, Tom Richards, showed up, then it was a big sigh of relief, because when I started the school, I didn't name it after myself. I wanted it to become a non-for-profit with an education, with a board of directors that would technically own the school. So I've never owned it. I wanted it to go on, after I'm not here.
And it's an accredited school.
Yes. Yeah. For NASAD is NASAD accredited. It's 501c3.
You're an artist. You're an educator. Do you get moved by some of these students coming through, and you see something, if it's light thrown in their painting, if it's tech, whatever it may be, do you get moved by some of the young artisans that come through your institution? Because I get moved all the time. That's why I'm still in it.
Absolutely. That's the reverse benefit of being an art educator, is that you rub shoulders with the next generation of talent, and you know what a responsibility it is to give them everything you can to help them become the artists that they want to become. And I think it's a privilege. It's a huge responsibility. I've always known, the tradition of realist painting and realist work, period, that will continue. Nobody owns it. It just, you pass through it and you hold up the torch and move forward and as best you can. And you're standing on the shoulders of some of the greatest artists that ever lived. And you hope to somehow impact all of this in a positive way so that the future could be as bright as the past. And I think, and I've been fortunate to be surrounded by people, like-minded people that are doing the same thing I am. And I never had to micromanage. I've always been able to find the people that really had their hearts set on the same thing I did when I was a young student. And I knew that I had to go to Florence because that was the only place that I could learn what I needed to learn. And when I got there, it was just magical. It was, Pietro Annigoni had a studio. There were 35, 40 students studying with Signorina Simi. It was a connection to the past. It was so incredible. And the beauty, the art, the whole culture of Italy was just supporting this whole thing. The frame makers, the color makers, the stores that sold paints and pigments and so forth, they still understood and knew the traditions from the 19th century. It was just amazing, just what I was looking for.
Sure.
And so part of what I've done is to help carry that along for the past few decades.
Amplify it.
It's been really, I wouldn't have changed anything, really, not a thing.
You're a lucky man.
It took time away from my painting, but it was a trade-off. I felt early on that I knew that if I worked exclusively with galleries and I wasn't an educator, and I had to make my living from selling work in galleries, that it would limit what I was able to paint and how I wanted to paint it. And so it's given me more flexibility in my artistically to be involved in teaching. And through that, I've always been excited by painting. Like every day, wake up and think about the next painting, and I can experiment. I have the luxury, if you will, to just try something completely new, a new medium or a new preparation for canvas. And so constantly expanding my knowledge of materials and procedures and techniques, which again, you can pass along to the next generation. And these are things that have basically disappeared. Our knowledge of materials, which I find fundamental to creating a beautiful painting, and talking to the students about it's the object, the painting that is important, is not just the image. And people kind of shake their head and look at me like, what are you talking about? I said, well, you have to see the painting in the flesh to really know what the painting's about. Like move around it, see how the right light reflects off from it, and get a sense of every brushstroke, everything that went into that work of art, the scale, even the frame, like everything about it is part of the experience. So when you go to a museum and you see a painting, and your memory of that painting in the reel is more real to me than if I see a reproduction of it.
Sure.
Just passing along those kinds of experiences to people that are learning to appreciate art is so helpful. It's like when you go to the museum and you see something that you really, really love, memorize it. Like stand in front of it and burn it into your memory banks. And you're stranded on a desert island, and you can have the Louvre in your head. Yeah. And that's why going to museums for me is like go to see a couple of paintings, stand in front of them until you've absorbed as much as you can from them. And then if you have enough energy and time, look at something else in the museum.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
Are there artists, since you're an educator, this has got to be difficult, especially where you reside. Are there artists that kind of are a foundation of what you wanted to do early on when you were a painter? Artists like Bouguereau or Rembrandt or whomever, who pushed you to move towards the direction where you are?
Okay, now we're getting into the really fun stuff of being an educator and talking to students about what it is that what are their dreams? What are they thinking about? And I just use myself as the template for this because for me, it was always about shoot as high as you can. Like, just think in terms of ideals. Like, what is the greatest work of art you've ever seen? And why is it the greatest work? And what does it mean to you? It's like, and compare that to music or dance or whatever you want, or, it can be Shakespeare, it could be whatever. And you think about it and you say, why does it touch me so deeply? And where does that work of art bring me? And that is what you want to think about as you're creating something. Because if you're thinking about something superficial, if you're thinking about some lustful scene or some very eye candy, just catchy thing to look at, and it has no meaning to you whatsoever, but you think it would spur the interest of someone else. Now, for me, there's still nothing wrong if that's what you want to do. I mean, people who write bubblegum commercials and there are people that write music for opera. They both have a job, and who be it me to judge? But I'm saying personally, I wanted to set that bar as high as I possibly could to just see if I could reach it. And what I was so fascinated by in the work that I was most moved by was that it brought me to a place of real contemplation. Like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to feel pain and feel loss or joy or whatever the emotional connection was to the work, whether it be through music or whether it's through painting? And I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to be part of that movement that will touch people's lives on a very deep level.
And the artist that did that for you, I'm trying to figure out who it would be for you.
Well, I think Rembrandt before all other painters, partly because of the psychological connection that you have with his work. And, the 17th century, I think, was probably, for me, at the height of, there was Titian, and you have, it's earlier, but that era, from Titian to, let's say, through Caravaggio, Rembrandt, those painters, for me, are the ones that really have greatest meaning. Let me give you an example of the kind of message that can come through a painting. In the Pitti Palace in Florence, there's a painting by Ribera called The Martyrdom of St. Bartholomew. And here you see a saint being martyred, and, this half-naked man being put onto a cross, and all these kind of grinning, horrible people around him and so forth. And so students will always say, well, it's such a depressing painting. There's this guy being killed. And I said to them, I used to think that too. I used to think that it was a really gruesome scene, and why would he pick that? And of course it's a religious scene, but still, I don't get the subject matter. It's like a crucifixion. It's kind of depressing to see somebody being killed. Then it dawned on me one day, standing in front of the painting, that it was a celebration of this man's faith in religion. And it was meant to be a question. The painting for me was a dialogue of, like, what does it mean to believe? What will you give up? Will you die for your beliefs? And I thought, wow, all of a sudden the painting became something totally different. And it was like so exciting to hear him speaking through the painting and saying, this is what it's like to be really religious, that you give up your life. And I thought, wow, okay, there's a theme for a painting. There's something that's really meaningful. And to find those themes, to find those things that connect you to humanity is what painting for me is all about. And art in general is just to get to those beautiful, the depths of humanity. So my favorite works of art are things like the Riachi bronzes in Calabria. They're two warrior sculptures, classical Hellenistic sculptures that are unbelievable. The first time I saw them, I burst into tears. I'd never seen anything so beautiful in my life. It's like hearing Maria Callas sing an aria. Like, I've never heard her in person, but you can listen to 10 arias by different singers, and the most beautiful recordings and, impeccable technically and so forth. And then you hear this old recording of Maria Callas with all kinds of background scratchy noises and everything, and you're brought to tears. So what is it? Where does that come from? And I think what I would like to instill in every single student that comes through the academy or anybody I've ever met, and to myself, I say the challenge is that, like, how on earth do you connect with that? And that's possibly the most beautiful thing in the world.
Difficult.
Years ago, I had a student, young guy from California. He said, "How do you become an artist? Like, give me the list of things I have to do." Yeah. And I said, actually, it was the first time anyone had ever asked me this. This is like 35 years ago. I said, I thought about it. I thought, well, I think to be a great artist, you have to be a great human being. Like, you have to walk the walk. You have to, actually have those feelings and thoughts in order for you to consciously put them on a canvas. And so when you commune with an artist, a great artist, you're communing with his thoughts. When you look at a Rembrandt self-portrait and you're looking into his eyes and you're thinking, holy cow, how did he transform a bunch of pieces of dirt and oil and stick them on a canvas and make me feel like a real human being, like we're on this planet for a short period of time, and we have a job to do. We have to become the best people we can possibly become. And it's like, it's a challenge. It's like, okay, that's what I did. Now, what are you going to do? It's fun.
What about young artists that have all the talent in the world, but they don't have any experiences to refer or call upon?
They got to get busy living.
Yeah.
Laugh your laughs, cry your tears. If you don't live and pain is, that's a great teacher. And so if you've had a kind of a smooth ride, you have nothing to really paint about. You have no suffering to share, or the joy of not suffering. Either way, you haven't lived until you've actually had to endure something.
That goes to a question that I always think about. I don't talk about it very much, but intent on what you're trying to create or say.
Intent, exactly. Yeah, and it's written over every single work of art. You can, if you know something about painting and you know what your little experience, you can read a painting like a book. It's just so obvious. What was the intent of that? What was he after, or she after? Was it, pushing something out there that's kind of clever and looks pretty and will decorate somebody's wall? Or it's a little tougher, right. Like you get into these areas where, it's not that, like, quote, normally beautiful, but there's something captivating. There's something that's engaging. And I'm thinking, why? If you can get someone to ask the first question, why was that painted? Or what was going on in the artist's mind? If you can get them to that point, yeah, you're halfway there, because then the conversation starts.
Yeah. From a gallery's perspective, which is not a great perspective, because it's the commerce of it all. However, I've always thought a sociologist would have a heyday in a gallery for a week. In peak season, let's say 300 people come through a gallery. Regardless of really what's hanging on the wall, the gallerist is hopefully passionate about what is in there. But people's reaction is pulling from, I've always said this, from their own associations to their path to where they are. If it being they're attracted to the palette, the technique, the subject matter, whatever it is, it's so subjective. But somebody viewing a piece, if it's in a gallery, if it's a commercial piece, if it's sculpture, if it's something spectacular, I've seen people literally just lose it. They were moved beyond, it surprised them and those around them, if it's family or friends. And I see it almost every year. And it's based on their associations. A lot has to do with, I have a sculpture by Dan McDermott that I think it's the longest tenured artist that we have here, 36 years. He creates kind of less representational mother swinging a child. It's kind of an inexhaustible subject matter. And that piece in particular, I have talked about that piece with a father and a daughter who has lost the mother.
Oh boy.
And variations of that, or the father and the mother, and they've lost the child. And then the beauty of life also comes through the conversations. But art does move people to places where they don't really, maybe they don't occupy that space intellectually, emotionally, but art helps you get to places where we're unfamiliar with. And I love that. In the gallery, talking to people and allowing and kind of experiencing things through their eyes. Yeah. That's what I enjoy. Yeah. It's fun.
Oh my God.
And I learn a lot about myself.
But you connect the artist with the collector. So you're right standing there at the moment where the magic of the conversation begins. And so,
yeah, it's interesting. And you'd be a great person to ask this. Exhibitions for you, shows for you. Are they tedious? Are they difficult? Are they enjoyable? Do they fill your tank? I've seen it all. Artists that crumble emotionally when they have to experience somebody talking about their work.
It's a tough one often, especially the first couple of times. I think it's somehow when you've produced a couple of paintings you're pretty happy with, to even think about letting them go is difficult. Yeah. In the beginning, and then you realize you know they like Khalil Gibran and talking about his children. Their children are the arrows and parents are the bows, and you've got to just direct them out there, let them go. It's a connection to the real world, which is so important for an artist to have that affirmation, if you will.
If it's productive.
If it's productive, but it's always going to, even if it's negative or positive, it's productive. Yep. Yeah. I mean, you're learning all the time. You're getting feedback, and that's really, really important. I think artists are mostly pretty insecure people, generally. And so whenever you sell something, it's like especially in the early days, it's real exciting and affirmation and so on. Yeah, the best way I can sum it up, I don't know. For everybody, it's so different. You know, some people have a commercial kind of enterprise going that they really work at selling their work, and it's designed for particular function. Portraits, for example, is a good example of a product. Getting it out there can also be very artistic. Don't get me wrong. That's an area of painting that is very product oriented. And other people are just out there doing all this stuff. They put it all together, and then you have this, whoa, what will people think about it? And then you get a reaction. And it's, I think, often, it's just really important to making decisions going forward, how people react. And so I moved from painting, let's say, a portrait of someone who looked exactly like that person. And it was always challenging and always, a great deal of fun, but the end product wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for a deeper kind of connection with the person, and the technique that I was using wasn't actually allowing me to do that. So I realized I had to change technique. I had to change the way I was painting. And, I'm in my 60s at this point, and it's not that easy. You start out a painting and you've done it the same way for, decades or several decades. And then all of a sudden I realized that by altering the way I was painting, that literally, and the example I would use to explain this is like, Rembrandt's technique and Bouguereau's technique. And if you wanted to make a painting with the significance of Bouguereau, using Rembrandt's technique wouldn't work, and vice versa. You can't paint the sweet saccharine images of Bouguereau with Rembrandt's technique. So the way in which you put paint on the canvas is part of the actual message. So, and you're trying to match up what's in your soul, what your message is, with a technique that will express that. So here I was in my 60s, and I was thinking, okay, I've got to make this change. I've got to learn how to paint differently. And I was encouraged by looking back at painters like Turner and Titian that went through massive changes in their life in terms of style and technique. So they both started out very tight and very detailed and ended up very broad and textured. And the question kept coming up was, why? Why did they start that one way and end up in a totally different way? Whereas Bouguereau pretty much painted the same way his whole career. So as I challenged myself to a completely different approach to painting and technically and so on, like painting with layers and textures and glazes and all this, then I was immensely satisfied with the result because it was so different. It was closer to the
Your
meaning,
voice.
the voice that I guess, yeah, thank you for that. That's exactly it. It was what I was trying to say, and it was coming out in a different way. It was super fun because it was just all experimentation. I would try one thing one day and then the next day something else. And then a larger painting based on the experimentations of these smaller studies. And of course, technically it was just as challenging. So I was working with different materials and trying different methods of painting.
So how the Tronies?
Tronies, yeah.
The Tronies.
Yeah, the Tronies
so
like came out of nowhere.
I have a daydream of your Tronies. And you can explain Tronies, but the five pieces that I have of Tronies of yours, I have a daydream of going to, and we have a lot of it out here, large $10 million, big, modern, minimalistic, architecturally interesting, I guess, homes, and putting through 40, 50 feet, because your Tronies are, I'm going to use American metrics, roughly 16 by 12, around there. Every 5 feet, just this small little Trony, and then another 5 feet, a little one. For some reason, I don't know why I daydream about your 4 or 5 pieces in that kind of environment, but I think it's wonderful, the juxtaposition of architecture and the work. And I actually think it does very, very well. We don't ever see that. Usually designers or collectors, patrons, whomever, they don't think that way. They want something that complements their environment, not necessarily that stands out, but appreciate the work itself and making it work. I'm biased, but and I actually will do an exercise of photography with those pieces in that environment, because I think it's really important. But describe what those Tronies are for you, because I think, and I might be hanging on to an inaccurate memory, those were modern for you.
Yeah.
And if anybody else, like myself, a few years back or whenever, they look like mini Rembrandts to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
there's absolute visual link. And semi-intentional, but not meant to be copies, but meant to be what I sense in often in Rembrandt and other Titian, for example, is that they're not specific people that are painted, but archetypes, if for lack of a better word. And I was working on a portrait, and the sitter wasn't going to show up anymore. So I thought, I'll just keep working on it, see what happens. And wow, that was fun. I transformed what I had started into a completely different person.
Yeah.
And it no longer looked like a specific person. And I thought that dreamy kind of archetypical look to the painting, I really liked. I really found that that's what I was striving for.
And so what is modern about your Tronies?
Modern
is it just the detachment of using reference model?
Pretty much, I guess. Yeah. There's somehow inside of me somewhere, I have painted, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds, and they're all in different stages of completion. Yeah. There are many heads underneath each one. I'll come in one day and say, well, I'll just work on this a little bit, and then the whole head will change. It's like an obsession almost to realize these characters. And that's exactly the definition of a Trony is in the 17th century. Artists would make up heads. Sometimes they would use, a model. I think they They consider Vermeer's Girl, the Pearl Earring, a Trony. Was part of an exhibition in Holland last year on Tronies. Very, very fun. They had paintings by Rubens, Rembrandt, Hals, all these people. And they're just character studies. They're just the expression of somebody's head. And so I'll leave you with one last kind of a thought about head studies or the way in which you approach representing a person in paint. So there's the John Singer Sargent. You look at a person, you translate them into these beautiful portraits, you lengthen their necks, you make them an elegant, amazing presentation that they can put on the wall with great pride. Bouguereau, the same thing. Very highly realistic images. And if he was going to paint Christ, for example, he would hire a model with a beard and so on, look like Christ, and he would do an amazing job. And you would know that, Bouguereau hired Giuseppe for, that model. Ironic, his name's Giuseppe. Anyway. And then Rembrandt would paint Christ, but he wouldn't use a model. But when you look at Rembrandt's painting of Christ, it's not... It doesn't remind you of anybody that might have modeled for that. It just reminds you of Christ. So why is that? Why, when you look at Rembrandt's depiction of Christ, is it you don't question the fact that that's Christ? And I think in that lies for me, the challenge, the thing that I'm looking to uncover or figure out that you can make something so convincing, whether it's, convincing somebody that the corner of an eye is actual flesh instead of paint, or whether the person you're painting is a person from history that no longer exists, but you've brought him back. You've resurrected Christ and you put him on a canvas. And I think that's just so exciting.
Yeah. I could listen to you all day long, by the way. I can.
Yeah, I bore my students to death. We stopped in the middle of a class or something, and, I just kind of ramble on about God knows what. But I think it hopefully gets them thinking and gets them sort of on the right track to find or strive for a deeper meaning in their own life and their own work. And I hope that's a good example for them. I hope that, giving or directing them toward the deepest and most meaningful values that they can come up with is the right message. And I hope I'm right.
I think you are. I think you've done a great service for many people, many genres of painting. How many students have come through the Florence Academy?
I don't have a total number. We graduate about 35, 40 students every year. So, okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been an hour. Is there any last thing you want to touch, or do you feel good about what we've done?
I would like to thank you for
selfish reasons I did this, truly.
Whatever your reasons, I would like to thank you from the gallerist that you are, that I know you are, and the way you represent your artists. I really enjoy working with you. That it's always a pleasure. Always very, from day one, it's been personable, and I find I would really like the art world to know that you're out there and that you could serve as a model for so many other galleries. And
I appreciate that. Yeah. That's from you. That's a great compliment. Well, so thank you for that.
What I believe.
Thank you for joining us on ATG. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe on our YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok channels.